Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. As the G7 prepares to reconsider the price cap on Russian oil, cracks may be emerging within the alliance, especially around the U.S. position. Now, meanwhile, Russia's economy faces mounting pressure from falling oil profits and growing budget deficits. And we're going to examine the latest developments now in this story and what they mean for global energy markets and geopolitical dynamics. Now, to analyze it all, I'm now joined by Eoin Micheál McNamara, security and foreign policy expert at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Good morning, good to have you. Let's jump right into this top story, the oil price cap here with the G7. So what kind of practical impact do you see here by lowering the G7 oil cap? We're looking at maybe $60 to $45 per barrel now on Russia's oil reserves, considering crude is already at rounding around $60. And what about this fallout here this morning from the Iran-Israeli developments? Give us your take.
Well, look, when we talk about Russia, it's very, very simple. Lowering the price of energy, lowering the price of oil, reduce Russia's profit margin, and that reduces Russia's scope over time to invest in its war machine in Ukraine, weakening its effect there. It'll also put more pressure on Putin domestically as he attempts to satisfy the Russian population. He'll have less finance to play around with. So over time, if this happens, it will rank up the pressure on Russia.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what about the fallout on oil prices? I mean, we've seen oil prices surging this morning. Do you think that's going to have any bearing on the markets now going forward these next days after what we've heard from Israel and Iran this morning?
I think it probably will, but in recent years, markets, oil markets, commodity markets have been quite volatile. And when we look at Russia specifically, they've been very good. They've actually been quite resilient at managing the peaks and the troughs. So now it really is a matter of Western resolves with sanctions, and with Mr. Trump in the White House, there's always question marks over that.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that resolve. Interesting point there on the G7. They're coming together in Canada and the Rockies this Sunday. How likely is it? I mean, we're hearing there's a split. There's a difference in the position between the EU and also with the United States on the outside there. Is that a realistic split, or are they going to come together on all this? How do you see this working out in those next days?
It's difficult to predict. I mean, there's been a lot of flip-flopping. Trump seems to like making threats. And of course, we've seen, I mean, he's got a lot of problems domestically. What we're in California at the moment, there's on the mind of his or on the mind of his administration, rather. And he's threatened Russia with these sanctions over the last few months. But real action hasn't been forthcoming. The EU has its own problems. I saw the High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, asked about this a few weeks ago. Did she think it was immoral that some EU member states were still buying Russian energy in significant quantities? And she said that she did think so, essentially, but more negotiations needed to be had in this regard. So unfortunately, when we look at the Western world right now, we don't see unity. We don't see that platform for resolve. We see division. So if I was being realistic about things, I would hope from this G7 meeting that we get some progress, but I don't think we will see a final outcome on this in the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you mentioned, Eoin, you mentioned division there. Let's also talk about sanctions, that 18th sanction package that the European Union is working on. How likely do you see this going forward? I mean, we have those typical players, Hungary and Slovakia, which are likely going to go against this. Do you think this is going to go and get approval, or is this going to be something else? It'll be rejected? Give us your take on that.
Well, there's going to be a lot of hard bargaining. There's probably going to be a lot of arm twisting when we talk about Mr. Orban in Budapest and Mr. Fico in Bratislava, and it remains up for question. But we need to think inside the European Union, for how long are we going to let a very small number of states, 2 states in this instant, undermine the whole bloc's power and interests geopolitically? I'd say we'll go through. Of course, it's not just about the bloc as a whole. It is true that united we stand, divided we fall, but we can still also levy sanctions bilaterally. So it's also about the sacrifices of independent or independent member states themselves. So nobody's forcing other member states beyond Hungary and Slovakia to buy Russian energy. We need to work on diversifying our supplies, and many member states within the European Union need to become less reliant on Russian energy into the future, and the time to start is now.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I mean, this is a topic that we've come back to many times. I want to jump back for a moment as well, Russian sanctions in general. One of those ways is that Russian shadow fleet, the ways that Russia is avoiding these sanctions, still effective for them, still finding into the coffers of the Russian war machine. To give us your take now in terms of how you assess the progress, the measures and tools that are available to counteract that Russian shadow fleet. Is that enough? Has there been measurable progress? How do you see this moving forward?
Well, I mean, when we look at tools and instruments in that regard, it's when you catch Russia, hit hard for this, monitor with your intelligence and let Russia get away with this. You know, I've written a bit about it. You know, shady ships traveling the high seas, supplying India, supplying China. Getting involved in these very risky maneuvers for the environment, transferring oil from shady ship to shady ship. But at the moment, there is a hesitancy, you know, looking at oil prices on the world market, looking at the general situation, and looking at the situation with energy supply and security of supply and the energy mix in Europe. Policymakers seem to be reluctant to take that final last step and really levy harsh and punishing sanctions on Russia for this, because they know it could rebound on their own economic situation at a difficult time for European populations. So it's about resolve. It's about a little bit of sacrifice. It's about taking some short-term pain for a long-term strategic gain. But all this is much easier said than done when we think of the policy-making context.
Mm-hmm. Just conscious of the time, I want to ask you really briefly about that revenue stream. We're looking also at the first quarter of 2025. Russian oil and gas revenues already halved, comparing that to 2024. What kind of alternatives does Russia have here? Is this going to continue to decline? Give us your opinion there, just briefly at the end.
Well, this will depend on more markets, the price of oil, alternative buyers. That is good news, of course, that its Russian revenues are down. We probably won't see the effect of that strategically or in Russia's geopolitical posture for some months, maybe years yet. But still, we have seen it with China, we have seen it with India, we have seen it with other states in the global south. There still is thirst for Russian energy supplies if Russia can find ways of transiting these supplies and diversifying its supplies away from the West to the global south. So I would say it's a mixed picture at this stage.
Mm-hmm. Right, so a mixed picture indeed is something that we're going to keep following, though. But thank you so much. That was Eoin Micheál McNamara there for your analysis. Really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but there's much more coming up right here on TVP World, so stay tuned. Goodbye.